9 p.m., it's not, by the way, 9 p.m., I grab the tea trolley, put away my books, put away the charts, head off on the last round of a very, very long shift. As I'm walking, trundling through the dark hallways, I see Mary waiting outside her room. I offer her a cup of tea. She offers me a whiskey. I said no, just for the record. I didn't know what the protocol was for that yet, and I'm not really much of a whiskey drinker. But she said she was lonely, so I sat and chatted. Me with my cup of tea, her with her whiskey. She said she was bored. Nothing exciting ever happened here. I kind of agreed with her actually on that one. It was quite dull. She also told me that when she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. She just saw this little old lady looking back at her, and I thought, she was very little and 93, little old lady. But we sat and chatted. She told me of her life during the war. She told me about being abandoned by her husband. She told me about her subsequent lovers as she worked in the bar in a city full of US sailors during World War II. Her adventures during this time were profound. She told me about the night her husband returned, finding her in her room above the bar, her current US sailor, and redecorating her room with their fists. She talked about the precious gifts that they brought her, the silk stockings with the seam up the back, the perfume, the occasional hamburger. She talked about that night, her fear, her surprise at seeing her husband. She talked about her quick escape out the window, shimmying down the drain pipe, stopping at the bottom to very carefully roll the silk stockings off so they didn't get damaged before running up the street in the middle of the night in her slip with the stocking in each hand. As she talked, it was like a giant spotlight swung around and highlighted her great escape. Because there she was, and suddenly I saw her and I wondered, how did I ever think she was just a little old lady? Just a little old lady. She was magnificent. She was wild. She was a firecracker. She was as much a free spirit in 1993 as she was back in 1943. And I started to think, what a terrible injustice this is. How can it be that people are there and we miss them because of what they look like on the outside? I started to spend more time talking to my residents and leaving the books for much later in the night. And I realized these people had adventures and lives and stories that were blowing my mind. I thought, I hope I have such an exciting life. And I realized that during that job that I found my people. They were there right in front of me the whole time. So 30 years later, I still work really hard to see people inside their bodies, inside their illnesses. Nowadays, I do it literally with photography. I still like to talk to older people. I still love to hear their stories. Nowadays, I often call it a research interview. Sorry, Nancy. At the end of my career, or as I get towards the end of my career, I'm starting to be more aware too of how personal I find Mary's story. The grey hair, the pause before I think to myself, should I sit on the floor? Will I be able to get back up again? The fact that it's actually a year-long goal to be able to touch my toes these days. All of those things remind me that soon I'll be fighting to be seen as well. But sometimes I look at the 20-year-old cashier at the cash register and I think, I wonder if I could get a senior's discount without having to show my ID. And I go for it. Thank you.